Remember, the people in power in Gaza are Hamas terrorists, and they were elected and have been in power for a long time. And I say this as someone who has also been troubled by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government, the most radical in Israel's history. But that isn't the point right now. There is no excuse. There is no explaining it away. But not all Democrats seem to agree. While President Biden seemed to be all in for the Israelis, even some in his own administration have been increasingly mixed. I mean, Secretary of State, in a since deleted tweet, called for a ceasefire shortly after the Hamas attack began. A ceasefire. So, will the atrocities now lead more Democrats to realize, or at least question, the narrative the far left has sought to make mainstream, that Israel is somehow the great evil here? Will this change the sentiment among the electorate, or will progressives, in my view, hijack the narrative again, after waiting for Israel to respond and then restart the finger-pointing and the blaming? I really don't know what's going to happen. Let's ask someone who would know better than me. Former Democratic Congressman from Florida, Ron Klein. While he was in Congress, he was vice chairman of the Foreign Affairs, Middle East and South Asia subcommittee. He's currently chair of the Jewish Democratic Council of America. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. So, do you think we're going to see any change among Democrats as a result of this?
Yeah, Dan, first of all, what we saw is unspeakable. I mean, you can't even put words in our mouths to explain what has happened here. Horrific. What you talked about as far as babies being beheaded, children, 263 young people at a music festival just slaughtered, and on and on and on. We're going to only hear more. And now with the hostages, of course. This is horrific. This is beyond.
So is it going to change? Is that going to change Democratic views?
Well, I think all Americans, I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, I think all Americans find this to be just reprehensible. So yes, first of all, I don't think most Democrats think that way anyway. And I think that if that poll was taken today, you'd have a very different result among Democrats and Republicans and other people as well, who just can't conceive of this happening. So yes, I don't think that this is a trend. I think this is something that may have been the view that Palestinians also deserve their own state, which, by the way, most Democrats and most Americans believe a two-state solution under the right circumstances is the right way to do it. It's certainly not going to happen in the short term based on what happened now. But no, I think Democrats are firmly behind Joe Biden. Yeah, there's some exceptions, but that's certainly not the trend of the party.
Well, and I wonder, you look at the age issues, right? Young people, increasingly anti-Israel, more Palestinian, particularly among Democrats. I wonder whether young people who now see all these young people who were attacked and the women who were raped, et cetera, whether that could change the perspective of young Democrats about Israel.
Yeah, I think that should change everybody's opinion, young and old. But yes, young people, to the extent that they would see that, see the pictures, see the walls of faces of people 18, 20, 22 years old, see the videos, them being carted away, hearing about the rape stories, things like that. This is barbarism. This is not something that young people accept any more than older people do. So yes, I do think that they will understand that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people, but it certainly is a group that needs to be eradicated.
You know, I think that you're right that maybe most Democrats don't feel this way. But, you know, the same way that there are on different issues, radical Republicans, right? There, you know, look at the group that ousted Kevin McCarthy, et cetera. You know, they don't necessarily represent the party, but they end up having a big impact on the party. And I think it's important that Democrats are ready to denounce other Democrats. And by the way, they have in this case, right? I mean, you've seen Democrats denouncing those who are not taking these atrocities seriously enough and not talking about this as a terror attack, and instead trying to talk about this as if it's a fight, as opposed to just pure unadulterated terrorism.
Well, I know that there are a number of Democrats, a handful, that are sort of the ones that are antagonistic to Israel, that even they came out over the last couple of days and called out the Palestinians
not protesting. Not all of them.
So I think realistically, this is a relatively small number of people. I agree with you. I think the Marjorie Taylor Greens do not represent all Republicans.
Right.
And some of the
And
people
Cori
on the
Bush?
Democrat side
Yeah.
don't represent. The unfortunate part on the Republican side, though, is they're the ones who have held up, the ambassador to Israel appointment. They're the ones who have held up the defense leadership people. They're the ones who have held up with, unfortunately, their ability not to have a speaker right now, the ability to even put more resources on the ground in Israel. So I hope that all can come together quickly.
That's a separate issue we're going to discuss with Mick Mulvaney later in the show. Ron Klein, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.